The X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, and of course, Simul Radio and Simul TV. If you would like to send me an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, X Zone Radio TV. To find out about the programming we have available for you 24/7, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit www.xzbn.net. And for the programming on the X Zone TV channel, which is exclusive to Simul TV, visit www.simultv.com. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Jim Koepke, and he is a nationally recognized expert on the subject of the Kennedy assassination. Jim has been studying the death of JFK for more than 20 years. He has interviewed persons who held positions of power, including 2 CIA directors. His research is detailed in his book, Chasing Ghosts, which is available on Amazon.com. Joining me now from some vacationing space, I don't know where it is, and I don't want to know because I'll probably be jealous and want to join him, is Jim Koepke. Jim, welcome back to the X Zone.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me here. It's real good to be here.
Jim, you are undoubtedly one of the most persons in the know when it comes to the Kennedy assassination. I've had the pleasure of having you on the show before talking about JFK, as well as other books that you've written. But I have to ask you, Jim, with all the turmoil that is going on in Washington these days because of Helsinki, because of the NATO meeting and other situations, how come the Kennedy assassination is still very prevalent? People are still interested in the Kennedy assassination all these years later. What is the attraction?
You know, Rob, I think it just goes to show that the deep state that we have heard so much about the last year or so was prevalent even back at the time of the Kennedy assassination, because I believe that there was a deep state involved with the death of JFK, and that same deep state exists today. And, you know, we see that we have FBI agents who are sworn to uphold the law, who apparently have been violating the law.
I was also watching the congressional hearings, and the attitude of, what's his name, Strzok? I believe Agent Strzok, was, you know, he was smug. He was arrogant. And when a congressman asks you a question, or prior to that, I understand he was in closed meetings with a Senate investigation, aren't they responsible and accountable to the government?
They are, especially somebody in a law enforcement role. I mean, my goodness, I grew up thinking, you know, the FBI, to be an FBI agent, you had to be a straight arrow.
Yeah.
And this guy, you know, I'm so disappointed in his behavior.
Why, based on the research that you have done over 20 years, why would anyone want President John F. Kennedy out of the picture, out of Washington, out of politics, dead?
Well, you know, he had no friends in the power brokers of Washington, D.C. The military hated him.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken with people in the military. They hate him. They thought he should have invaded Cuba. They thought he was soft on communism. The CIA hated him. They feared him because he had said he was going to smash the CIA into 1,000 pieces,
Right.
because he could not trust them. The larger corporations, big oil, didn't like him. The only person Kennedy was for was the average man. The average man was really the people who were benefiting from the Kennedy administration, which is how I think it should be.
Jim, am I imagining things, or am I seeing history repeating itself with the current president in Washington?
I don't think you're imagining that at all. I think there are people deeply ensconced in power right now
Mm-hmm.
who want Trump out, who want Trump gone. And that's just wrong. You know, he was duly elected.
Right.
Whether you like the man or not, that's one thing. He was duly elected, and he has the right to serve his term.
I often wonder how the fake media would have reported the events during the presidency of John F. Kennedy. Back then, the media was totally different. It was credible. You had journalists. You didn't have this shock value media that we have today because there are so many channels out there. Shock value gets advertisers. In your opinion, once again, Jim, based on the research that you've done on the Kennedy case, how devastating or how negative or how troublesome is the way that the media is treating the current president of the United States? Not all the media, but certainly media like CNN.
Oh, yes, absolutely. They are very biased.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem I have with it is they are not there to report the news. They are there to take down the president.
Yep.
They are there to discredit the Trump presidency. Again, you use the term journalist. I don't think CNN has any journalists, at least not that I'm familiar with. You know, there are people who are supposed to have their whole mission is to report the news,
Right.
not to create the news or to present a certain viewpoint. You know, I can pick up the newspaper any day of the week, and I'll find stories that are so slanted that, you know, it's just so disappointing.
You know, when I was learning how to be a journalist way back when, one of the main criteria for being a good journalist was you could not be biased in a story. You presented the facts as the facts could be found, presented, and verified. It's totally changed these days, Jim. It's totally changed.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, about a few months ago, there was an editor in the New York Times who made an offhand comment that was quoted saying that he only wants stories that present Trump in a bad light. Well, and he's not alone with that. Again, that's not a journalist who would say something like that. It's a shame. It really is.
When we're looking at the situation that faced John F. Kennedy way back when, and we see how it turned out, is there a chance, a slight chance, that the same thing might happen to President Trump?
I think it's very possible. There are enough people who hold positions of power who don't want him in that job, and people are so open about it. You know, you see people, especially in the entertainment venue, who talk about killing Trump. Who, you know, we had a so-called comedian several months ago hold up a mock decapitated head of Trump, and there would have been outrage about this 40 years ago or 20 years ago. And now it's just become kind of acceptable. I mean, there's so many actors and people in entertainment and people on late night TV shows, which I have quit watching because they're so overwhelmingly filled with hate.
Yes.
It's just the norm. And, you know, that's just wrong in my book anyway.
Not to mention the members of the overpaid athletic sports industry.
Oh, yes, yes. You know, if they want to protest something, they have plenty of time during the week. They can do it before, outside the stadium, before the game, outside the stadium, after the game. But, you know, I've known so many people who have served in the military, who have given their lives in the military. Mm-hmm. My father was a disabled veteran, and I almost say thank goodness he's dead now, because he would have lost his mind to see these guys kneeling during the Star-Spangled Banner.
Yeah. Find that totally unpatriotic, and the country doesn't deserve that from anyone.
No.
Jim, you and I have to
Correct.
take our first commercial break. Please stand by. Exonation, Jim Koepke is our very special guest. We're going to be talking to Jim when we come back from this commercial break about the Kennedy assassination. He is the author of a book entitled Chasing Ghosts, which is available on Amazon.com. I've got the book. I've read the book. It is truly an excellent book and a must for anyone who's into the JFK Kennedy assassination. Here we are all these years later, and still so many unanswered questions. So many who, what, when, where, why. So many conspiracy theories. But are they conspiracy theories, or are they facts that have been put into the realm of a conspiracy by those who wield the power? That's my question for you. We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Wow. All these years later, still so many questions. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. You're watching us on simultv.com. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone radio show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on SimulTV. Plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is SimulTV. SimulTV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. SimulTV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have SimulTV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
We live in rapidly shifting times of extreme volatility and uncertainty. Such profound change brings a unique opportunity for the evolution of consciousness. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of Mission Evolution Radio Show, a program that explores the latest scientific developments and deepening spiritual truths supporting human evolution. Join me on XZBN.net, where I interview leading experts in science, physics, medicine, spirituality, and more. By applying divergent viewpoints to leading-edge topics, we uncover expansive and evolutionary truth to assist you on your path to enlightenment. More information and past episodes are available at missionevolution.org.
Welcome back, everyone. Jim Koepke is my special guest. He's the author of Chasing Ghosts. It's a detailed account of the JFK assassination. And Jim, can you take us back in time through the X Zone time machine to that fateful day in Dallas, Texas, when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated, or even prior to that, because I'm sure there are events that led up to that date that play a very significant part.
Yes, well, I think the beginning of it really was the Bay of Pigs failure. And that's really when the military decided that they did not want Kennedy as a president. Same thing with the CIA. People in the CIA, they knew that Kennedy planned to basically disband the organization and turn the spying activities over to the military. At the same time, and this really is what wrapped the whole package up, is Lyndon Johnson, Kennedy's vice president, was in serious trouble. He had a couple aides who were being investigated. He had a good friend in Texas who had been working with Billy Saul Estes in the process of actually defrauding the federal government. And according to grand jury testimony, Johnson had given the approval to kill some people in Texas who were investigating him and his illegal activities.
Wait a sec, Jim. Wait a sec. The vice president of the United States sanctioned murders?
Well, this is grand jury testimony.
My gosh.
And one of the things I was very surprised to learn is this was in the Dallas newspaper many, many years ago, after Lyndon Johnson died, that grand jury testimony was received that he sanctioned murders of people who were investigating his fraudulent activities.
My God.
And barely a peep. I couldn't find any national media stories about it. It was just in the Dallas Morning News, which is a pretty major newspaper.
It is, yeah.
In Dallas. Yeah, and it was very detailed, and it was just unbelievable to me. And this is grand jury testimony. There was a United States Marshal who was so intrigued by this and looked into it, and he himself publicly said that he believed it. He believed that Lyndon Johnson had done this, and he was going to conduct his own investigation. And of course, as is not uncommon in the Kennedy assassination, he wound up dead very mysteriously. And that's the last person I know of down in Texas who decided to go ahead and look into that piece of the Kennedy assassination. But yeah, it's stunning. So this really, when Lyndon Johnson was approached, he was saving his own neck. He was, as president, he could curtail any investigation, and he did. He ended all these investigations into his fraudulent activities. So really, he was saving himself. He was saving his position, his status, his power, and quite possibly saving himself from some jail time, if not worse.
Johnson himself, I believe, had vested interest in the oil industry, and he was one of the ones who wanted the Vietnamese War, the war in Vietnam, to go on because it would keep many of his friends in the industrial and military world in money.
That's true, especially the oil industry.
Yeah.
Also, a major contractor called Brown and Root. They built military helicopters, things like that, made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars from the Vietnam War. So the amount of money, and it was just incredible. Senator Barry Goldwater kind of implied that there was something very wrong going on because he said, to paraphrase, Lyndon Johnson made more money while he was president of the United States than he could possibly explain. Became a very rich man while he was president of the United States. Back then I think they were making $100,000 a year or something, but somehow Johnson wound up being a multimillionaire. Very odd that you can do that.
And yet they're scrutinizing the president, the present president, with a fine-tooth comb. Why don't they look back in history and say, well, look what this president did, look what that president did? It's not as if President Trump is the only president in history that had business interests prior to walking into the White House, and yet here they just anyway. That's my opinion. That he's being treated unfairly by the powers to be in order to fulfill his obligations as the President of the United States to protect his country against enemies, domestic and foreign.
Exactly. And, Trump's main goal is to drain the swamp.
Yep.
And that affects an awful lot of Washington, D.C., and an awful lot of people in power. They don't want the swamp drained.
No, because it's going to expose a lot of dirty secrets at the bottom of the swamp that have been buried for years.
Exactly. And I think people would be outraged. I don't think we know just, 1% of the dirty things that have been going on the last decades.
Well, wasn't President John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy trying to do the exact same thing? Give the people back the country? Because, as I saw it, the Kennedys, as well as President Trump, is working under your Constitution, where it says "We the people," for the people, by the people, and over the years, prior to President Kennedy, after President Kennedy, prior to President Trump, I don't know what's going to happen after he leaves, but it was I the people instead of we the people, or I the person.
That's the whole concept of America, the United States of America. And it's really been taken away from us. Well, ever since John F. Kennedy was killed, people have had too much power.
Mm-hmm.
Rich people, wealthy people, too much power, and the average person has just been getting the shaft.
The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And then you get somebody like President Trump and President Kennedy who wanted to change that around and put everybody on an equal footing. And look what happened. We all know about Lee Harvey Oswald. We know about the Zapruder film. We know about Jack Ruby. But who were some of the other major players in the JFK assassination?
Well, one of the interesting things I found is one of the very high-ranking people in the CIA. His name was David Atlee Phillips, and he was investigated by what was going on in Congress back in the 1970s, and very suspicious that he was actually identified as being in the company of Lee Harvey Oswald in the months before the assassination, and people gave some very, very compelling testimony that he was with Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, you have to ask yourself, if Oswald was just a lone nut, a lunatic, what would a high-ranking official from the CIA be doing going around with him? And the things they were doing were going around and working with Cuban refugees, militant Cuban refugees. Very suspicious. From what I was told by people in the military and the CIA is that these Cuban militants were very much involved in the Kennedy assassination. And I don't think Oswald. I think he is what he said he was.
A patsy.
He was a patsy.
I had Oswald's girlfriend on, and I can't remember her name right now. Oh, God.
You don't mean Marina, his wife?
No, his girlfriend. The girlfriend.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can't think of her name either.
All right, my producer's going to try and find her name for us. But I asked her point blank while she was on the show, was Lee Harvey Oswald an agent of the CIA? And she said unequivocally, yes.
Well, and he did have a CIA personnel file.
Yeah.
And when the House Assassination Committee asked to see the file, it was empty. So, again, very, very odd. Very odd.
Very odd for such a serious situation. It also parallels the inquiry into 9/11, how certain things just change. And then you have, all the different things that are going on within the government that make no sense to people, but apparently it makes sense to politicians. And I think that this is why so many people today, whether it's in the United States or here in Canada where we have our own mess in Ottawa, that people are losing faith in the system. And I often wonder, Jim, if this is not the priority that certain factions of the government have, dumb the people down so they really don't give a damn anymore.
Exactly, and you make them feel helpless.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing they can do. There's nothing to do to change that. But, John F. Kennedy, he gave people hope
Yes.
that he could change that. Just like President Trump is
Yeah.
doing the same thing. And it seems like both have dark forces against them. Both have forces that are trying to discredit them and get them out of office.
Another similarity between JFK and President Trump is that JFK depended on his family to be at his side, just like President Trump with his family by his side. Jim,
That's true.
You and I have to take a break, my friend. We'll be back in a few minutes right after this news break from our newsroom. Exonation Jim Koepke is my special guest, and he is the author of Chasing Ghosts, and it is available on Amazon.com. Jim and I will return on the other side of this break as we continue talking about the JFK assassination here in the X Zone on the X Zone Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, and Simul Radio and Simul TV.
Broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, to the world and beyond. You're watching the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
AVS Media Demo.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world, interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com. Jim Koepke is my special guest this hour, Exonation. His book is entitled Chasing Ghosts. It's about the JFK assassination, and you can get a copy online right now, well, after the interview, please, at Amazon.com. What is your opinion of the Zapruder film?
I think it's a very valuable piece of information for a couple of different reasons. One of which is it shows us without question that the president's head was thrust backwards, which is not possible if you're shot from behind. Another thing it tells us, at least it tells me, is that the only journalist who was allowed to see that initially was Dan Rather, famous newsman.
Yeah.
Dan Rather, when he described what happened, he said Kennedy's head was pushed forward, which was exactly the opposite of what was true. And ever since he reported on that, Rather's career has actually done very well. A very odd thing to be rewarded for making such a major mistake about such a major incident.
That's funny that they gave the first viewing to Dan Rather instead of Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, exactly. I have no idea why they happened to pick Rather out. I mean, he was a Texan, of course. He was, but I don't believe they let him see that film for some time after it was processed. So they must have thought they could rely on him or count on him. Then an odd thing, and as we know, Rather has had some other problems with telling the truth. That's why he lost his job eventually at CBS.
When President Kennedy's body was taken to, I believe, was Heartland General?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
There was a squabble between the military who was trying to claim the president's body and the coroner for that jurisdiction in Texas. Why was that just fluffed aside? Why wasn't it led? Why wasn't the coroner? Because it was his jurisdiction. Why didn't he have the final say? And what difference do you think it would have made if the autopsy had not been done by the military and the military's finding entered into the record?
I think it would have made a world of difference, because if you would have done the autopsy there, which was legally required in Dallas, the person performing it would have been able to speak to the Parkland doctors, and they would have informed them that that was an entrance wound that hit Kennedy in the throat. The people at the Naval Hospital in Washington, D.C., assumed it was just a tracheotomy incision, which it partially was, but it was initially an entrance wound for a bullet, which totally destroys the magic bullet theory and the idea that only one person was the assassin. It again shows you that somebody somewhere was desperate to get that body out of there before a legitimate autopsy could be performed. And then you have to ask yourself, why? Well, because they wanted to control what information came out. They wanted to control the conclusions about how the president was killed.
It doesn't make sense to me that if they were going to orchestrate all of this, the crossfire would have made a lot more sense. It would have had more believability in it. And instead of having one assassination and one assassin, you have three. Why the deception? Why put Lee Harvey Oswald as a scapegoat when you could have done it very easily the way it was done?
Yeah, I don't know, but I do know that the people behind this had a plan. And, well, all I could say is it seemed like the plan worked for them, because it came out the way they wanted it. They all got away with murder, and not just murder of an average person, but murder of the President of the United States. So, for some reason, they thought that having a single scapegoat would be the best way to go, and it seems like it worked for them.
Okay, so we've got the president who's been assassinated. His body was taken to Parkland General. From there, it was brought on board Air Force One, where President Johnson was sworn in as the President of the United States, as to maintain the line of power, so to speak. Lee Harvey Oswald is arrested. He's charged. He is, a couple of days later, he is being transferred from police headquarters to, I can't recall where, when Jack Ruby comes out of the crowd of the basement of the police station and fires into the stomach of Lee Harvey Oswald, killing him on national TV. What was, in your opinion, based on your research, where did Ruby fit into all of this prior to him popping off Lee Harvey Oswald?
Well, Ruby had a lot of low-level mob connections with the mafia, and one of the things that did not receive much publicity, but was found out when Congress investigated the assassination back in the 70s, is Jack Ruby had actually made a long-distance telephone call to New Orleans the night before he shot Lee Harvey Oswald. The number he called was one of Carlos Marcello's lieutenants, Carlos Marcello being a mob boss,
right,
a mafia guy. The Warren Commission actually asked Jack Ruby about that phone call, and Ruby said, well, I dialed the wrong number, but the phone call was almost 15 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've dialed wrong numbers, and I say, oops, sorry, wrong number, and the call takes 5 seconds.
Exactly.
To believe that someone spoke for 15 minutes to a wrong number to someone they didn't know, that just makes no sense. I can't believe that. But the Warren Commission said, well, it wasn't important.
Well,
if you talk to...
Go on, Jim.
No, if you talk to someone in the mafia, especially a high-ranking officer in the mafia, the day before you commit a murder, I just have to wonder if that phone call had something to do with being ordered to kill Lee Harvey Oswald. That makes sense to me.
But if we're looking at a conspiracy that contains certain aspects of the government, the CIA, military intelligence, national intelligence, are we to assume, and I don't like assuming because it makes an ass out of you and me, are we to assume that parts of organized crime actually work with or for the government at times?
We are to assume that. And, we don't even have to assume that because that is a fact, and I don't think anyone disputes that.
Mm-hmm.
They're very well documented that the CIA worked with the mob in order to kill Castro. Again, the CIA, this is a fact that no one disputes, worked with the mafia.
Well, the CIA
location.
Yeah. Well, the CIA was using the University of Florida as one of their stations, the largest station in the United States. And what the hell is the CIA doing working on in the United States when it basically wasn't formed for domestic work?
Right, and that domestic activity is actually illegal by the CIA. So, again, very, very unusual.
So when you've got President John F. Kennedy who's going to disband the CIA, it's going to open a lot of worms out of a can, and best thing to do is to cut the story before it even starts.
Exactly. And, you had so many people in power in the Pentagon and the CIA, again, the vice president, who was behind us and supportive of it. They couldn't lose. They really couldn't.
Wow. Well, didn't Judge Warren actually go down to see Ruby in jail, and Ruby wanted to he said that he would go on record and basically spill the beans if the Warren Commission took him out of that jail and brought him to New York?
That's exactly what he said, and Judge Warren basically told him to shut up. Again, you would think if he was investigating, he would want to know for the record what Ruby had to say, but he told Ruby not to say anything. So,
he could have easily put Ruby in Rikers Island, for goodness sake.
Yeah. Again, doesn't make any sense.
So would you say that the Warren Commission was a travesty of justice?
Yes, it was. Its sole purpose was to cover up. They had no intention of investigating anything. Its sole purpose was to cover up the truth from the American people.
Unbelievable. When you were doing the research into your book, Chasing Ghosts, what was one of the most surprising aspects of the JFK assassination that you discovered during your research?
Well, I think that might be when I spoke with CIA Director Richard Helms.
Mm-hmm.
We had quite a conversation, and he was an older gentleman at the time, in his mid-80s, and I kind of wore him down a bit. He didn't have a lot of endurance.
Right.
And, finally, I think he wanted to get it off his chest. And he said, well, yes, there was a conspiracy. And he said, he was very careful with his language.
Yeah.
He said persons who had involvement with the CIA were responsible for Kennedy's death. So
okay.
Not really
all right,
CIA
Jim.
agents, but
agents or operatives or part-time employees.
Sure.
You and I have to take our final break. Please stand by. X-Zone Nation, the one and only Jim Koepke is our special guest. He's the author of Chasing Ghosts, a book all about the JFK assassination. Chasing Ghosts by Jim Koepke is available on Amazon.com. I'm Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone. You're listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, iHeartRadio, Simul Radio, and watching us on simultv.com on the X-Zone TV channel. Don't go away.
You have heard of the X-Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X-Zone, Sci-Fi, and Horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
The new nonfiction book, Razor of Madness, is similar to cult movies like Clockwork Orange, Dragon's Tattoo, or The Other Side of Hell. Wayne Morin Jr. and Thomas Lee Howe will expose widespread and systematic deficiencies in this thought-provoking tell-all novel. Mind control rages among scholars in law schools. Human rights are ignored while thought reform and mental manipulation are accepted practices used as behavior modification. Dr. Louis Jolyon West comes to mind. Media and public scrutiny shows that United States mental hospitals are in fact destructive murder industries. Razor of Madness expose novel details this epidemic through an in-depth professional and personal investigation. For decades, there has been a revolving door policy that still releases killers and pedophiles back into society. The maestro of mind control continues to haunt America to this very day. Razor of Madness is available in paperback or as a downloadable ebook at Amazon.com.
The concept of a new age has been around since the late 19th century, yet much of its original meaning has been lost. What exactly is the new age? Is it a religion, a collection of obscure esoteric practices, a series of doomsday predictions, or an astrological event? The New Age Chronicles is a unique complementary publication bringing reason and grounded information to separate fact from fiction. Chock full of valuable information to support you as we make the monumental shift into the new era. You won't want to miss a single innovative issue. The New Age Chronicles newspaper is coming soon to www.newagechronicles.com.
Exonation, Jim Koepke is our special guest. He's the author of Chasing Ghosts. It's all about the JFK assassination, and if you'd like to get your very own copy of Chasing Ghosts, or if you know somebody who's into the many unsolved or unanswered questions by the government concerning the JFK assassination, the name of the book is Chasing Ghosts, and it's available on Amazon.com. As always, Jim, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Great pleasure talking to you today. I understand the questions that you must have had answered as you thought you were getting more questions answered. Where do you think that we went wrong as a society when it comes to how the JFK assassination was handled?
Well, I think that people were in such shock.
Mm-hmm.
And, I worked in mental health for many years, and I know that when a traumatic event happens, people just want to put it behind them. They want to get on with their lives, get on with things. And I think as a nation, people just said, well, okay, Oswald killed the president, and I just want to, it was so traumatic, they didn't want to deal with it anymore. Mm-hmm. I think that was a mistake. I wish people back then would have stood up and demanded to know the truth. And when little bits of information started coming out, I wish people would have demanded, I want action, I want justice, I want to know what really happened. I think that's kind of how people lost their way.
Is it too late now for the government to reopen the investigation? And even if the participants are no longer with us, just put an end to the speculation. Come clean with what really happened so that it could not happen again.
Absolutely. In order to deal with any trauma, you have to actually face it and understand what happened.
Right.
And we as a nation have not been able to do that because the truth has been withheld from us. It would be very good for all of our mental health as a nation, as a people, I think for the world, really, to know the truth, to know what actually happened so we can process that event and deal with it and make sure it would never happen again.
I really thought during the Watergate situation where President Nixon basically was forced to resign, that someone would have said, hey, wait a minute, there's another crime that went unsolved. Let's reopen the Kennedy assassination. It wasn't done then. What would it take to get that investigation reopened?
The interesting thing is, for the first time in 40 years, if not more, mm-hmm. we have a president who has the guts, who doesn't care about the deep state. He has the guts, the courage to reopen the investigation. He could do it. There is still information out there, I'm very certain about that would answer a lot of questions. And so I'm hoping that President Trump will at some point take this on. Of course, he has his hands full. Unfortunately, he spends so much time defending himself from nonsense that, he only has so many hours in a day.
Yep.
But he is someone who could do it.
As I see it, Jim, the government is no different than any other business. You've got the senators and the congressmen who are basically the board of directors, and then you have people who pay tax who are the shareholders. And it takes, in my opinion, a businessman to run a country, and that is what President Trump is, beyond a shadow of a doubt. He's a businessman. He's a very flamboyant businessman, but he gets results. Well, they forget, and when I say they, I'm talking about the tainted media, that with what he has done with North Korea, unprecedented. The attempts that he's making to make peace and work with Russia, I look at that as a success, because if you can bring unity between your two greatest powers and work things out between the two great powers, the United States as well as Russia, this is an example. And of course, on the other side of the ocean with Kim Jong-un, this is an example to the rest of the world how we can get along. And I don't understand, Jim, why the rest of the media does not see it that way.
I know, and if you look at the economy, you have record low unemployment for minorities,
Yep.
For persons of color, for women. The opportunities for women has increased significantly. He has been, whether you like the guy or not, you have to admit, if you're honest, he has been one of the most successful presidents we have ever had.
And that's only in his first year and a half.
Yeah, can you believe it? He's accomplished that much in a year and a half. He's, again, an honest person, whether they like him or not. Yes, he can be crude. I'm not going to argue that. But he's been incredibly successful, and I really think he's done wonders with North Korea.
Yep.
He really seems to be bringing them around. I mean, that one thing alone could define a presidency.
I think it already has, Jim. I really do. Have you noticed lately that as soon as Mueller's investigation started and that the charges were brought against certain people, the indictments, the grand jury, and so on, that the name Stormy Daniels is no longer in the news?
Yes. So you'd have to explain to me why it was ever in the news.
I can't figure that out myself, you know. I remember writing an op-ed that said, this is not the first time a president of the United States had an affair, except this affair was when he was not a president. Other presidents, and I think I found 9 other presidents who had affairs while they were in the White House, and everybody forgets about that. But come President Trump, who had an affair prior to taking his oath, man, this is so wrong. No, it's not. The guy's human, okay? If his wife can forgive him, if his family can forgive him.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what's next?
Yeah, when Trump does it,
go ahead, Jim.
There seems to be a different standard. There seems to be a different standard for Trump than any other president.
Yeah. I don't think it's fair. About like people tell me, Rob, what do you know? You're a Canadian. And you know what? I consider myself a very close neighbor and good friend to many Americans. And I'm very happy when I can just grab my passport, drive to Buffalo, which is about a half hour from where I live here in Hamilton, cross that border, and, enjoy myself in the United States. Mind you, when I go to another country, whether it's the United States or any other country that I've gone to, I always look at myself as an ambassador from Canada, so I behave on my best behavior. But I really think that the president has gotten a bum rap, and I certainly hope that the investigations that are going on right now, I hope that they find nothing, and I'm sure they will. And why he's being investigated so harshly by members of his own party. Well, Mueller's a Republican, isn't he? And then you've got the assistant of the Justice Department, who is Rosenberg.
Yeah.
He's. It just doesn't make sense to me. I look at what the man has done to help the country, to help the citizens of the United States, and how he's trying his very best to bring the world together and make it a better place. He's got his own way of doing it, but don't we all have our own ways of doing things? I just don't.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are you doing next, Jim? Are you working on any new projects?
Well, I'm still doing some work on the Kennedy assassination. I found out that the KGB actually did an investigation of the Kennedy assassination back in the 60s.
Wow.
And they came to the conclusion that Lyndon Johnson was involved in the murder of President Kennedy. They claim they have documentation about that. So I've been trying to get the Russian government to share that information with all of us. And if they do, that will be the story of the year.
And who knows, maybe that will be the bit of evidence that will get the case reopened, and once and for all, JFK will rest in peace.
That would be great.
Jim, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Always a great pleasure talking to you. Take care of yourself, and when a new book is out, let me know. We'll get you on to talk about it.
Will do. Thanks a lot, Rob. I appreciate it.
Take care, Jim. And Exonation, if you'd like to get your very own copy of Chasing Ghosts, it's available on Amazon.com. Wow. The Kennedy assassination all these years later, and we're no closer to knowing what the official truth is. Mind you, thanks to investigators and researchers like Jim Koepke, we have a unique view that I believe many of those who may still be alive today would not want us to know. Is that another 9/11? Is it another story, conspiracy that is going on? Because if the truth was to come out, there'd be a lot of people wearing egg on their face. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X-Zone continues here from our broadcast studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to get your own copy of the X-Chronicles newspaper, we have it available with our compliments at www.xchroniclesnewspaper.com. And if you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. I'm Rob McConnell. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
Modern Esoteric, Beyond Our Senses by Brad Olson, consummates the lifology story about where humanity originates. It is the lost continents, the primitive wisdom, the mythos of creation, and the rethinking of ancient history as we are taught in academia. There is much more to the story than what we have been told. As this is the first book in the Esoteric series, Modern Esoteric starts at the beginning of time and accelerates up to this modern age. Future Esoteric is book 2 in the series and takes a forward-looking position ahead of today with an open and honest examination of the ET issue and various unexplained phenomena. To discover the writings of author Brad Olson, visit www.bradolson.com. That's www.bradolson.com. Are you or is someone you know struggling with addictions, depression, anxiety, relationships, low self-esteem, lack of confidence, grief, success, and prosperity? Do you know that your subconscious belief plays a big role in the outcome of your hard work? We can help you permanently change the beliefs that may be the reason for your struggles and failures. We care about getting you the return on your investment and the results you are looking for. We can help you be free of the limitations of your past and in realizing your highest potential. We work with people by phone and Skype. For more information, visit us at www.ritasoman.com. That's www.ritasoman.com. Do you think you have energy problems in your home? Do you feel better when you're away than when you're home? Joey Korn is a global leader in the world of dowsing who specializes in personal energy clearing and space clearing. He can help you create an ideal energy environment in your home no matter where you live in the world. Learn about his remote spiritual house cleaning services and much more at www.dowsers.com. You can get Joey's book, Dowsing, A Path to Enlightenment, as well as other dowsing books and tools, Kabbalah books, and Walter Russell books. Joey's work is really amazing. Go to dowsers.com right now. That's DOWSERS.com or call 1-877-DOWSING. That's 1-877-369-7464.